All right, guys, ask a felon back with another one for you. Got to ask the question, what was your first day in prison like? I'm not going to jump straight to prison. I'll get into that to the next. I'm trying to keep this in this episode process, but I'm doing it based off the questions I'm asked. So for the question being asked about the first day of prison, all I can tell you is prison and jail are two different things. Jail, you have a lot less freedom than you do in a prison. And I know that may sound weird, but what I mean by that is in jail, you're confined to being in the dorm, if you want to call it a dorm, or a day room, pretty much the entire time you're there. You get once a week or maybe twice a week. In my county, a lot of times it ain't even open to where your orders are delivered to you. Commissary is the food you buy and things like that. But hang on, this is messing up. All right. But anyway, people were saying, when I was in jail, they was all saying, I can't wait to go to prison. I can't wait to go to prison. It's so much better there. So much better there than jail. I'm thinking in my head, you guys are crazy. Who's thinking that I'm ready to go to prison? Me, I'm scared to death. I ain't never been to prison. I've done time in jail quite a few times, but I've never been to prison. So I'm thinking, yeah, they're out of their mind. But when you get to prison, there is a lot more freedoms. I'll get into that in another video. But as far as the first day in prison, the first taste of prison is the RDC building, which everybody who got sentenced to prison, they go to the RDC. It's called the Reception Diagnostic Center. That's where they diagnose you. You see a psychiatrist. They take your DNA. They test you for diseases. You're basically treated like cattle there. Like, really, it's got the bars behind it. Your door is the bars, and there's a guard that walks up and down, just like you see in the movies. That's what RDC's like. And the thing about RDC is your bunkie could be a killer, and you could be in there for theft. They mix you up with anybody, so that's just danger waiting to happen. But you go from the county jail on a bus. The bus comes to the county jail. I think it's twice a month. They come transport anybody who's going to prison straight to RDC. Everybody goes to the same place before they go to prison. Anybody in the state leaves the jail, they're going straight to the RDC. When you first get to what you're going to do is you're going to ride that bus. You might stop a few places along the way to pick up some people from other jails. And then you're going to go to the RDC. You get off the bus at RDC. As soon as you walk in, there's a line waiting. You just walk in that line, and the line. It's everybody that you rode the bus with. And there can be other people there from another bus. But you walk in, you get in line, you wait to get you wait and get your stuff after you go through the process. And the process is, if you got hair, they're shaving it. They just take it with a zero attachment and shave your bald. You do that before you get to the strip search at the shower. So after you get your head shaved, like if your hair is kind of short, they won't even mess with it. They only do it if your hair is long. But they shave your head, then you get in line and you go through the shower process, which the shower process is everybody's in a line so everybody can see you. You get butt naked, then you get to shower, then you get to turn around and bend over and cough for the guard who watches you in front of everybody again. It's humiliating. You got to bend over and cough, and then you get out of the showers. You get your blanket, you don't get no pillow, but you get your blanket, you get your jumpsuit, maybe a stick of deodorant, a toothbrush, but you get bare minimum at RDC because they look at it, you're only here for holding. You're locked down 23 and a half hours. You get out for your dinner, your lunch, and your breakfast. And that's it. You go to chow, no talking. You ain't even allowed to talk at chow. You go there, no talking at all. And then you go back to your rooms. That's it. And then the showers. I was there, I think, for 2 weeks. You get a pen, a little rubber pen. It's real bendy. You know, it's hard to write with because it's only about that big as your finger maybe. And it's just a piece of rubber. It's real flexible with the ink thing in it. Get that. You can only have so many stamps. You can only have so many pieces of paper. You're in your cell waiting. They call you down one day. One day you might see a psychiatrist. The next day you might see the doctor. They take your blood. Next day you might go down and they take your DNA. They swab you for DNA, put your DNA in the system. Where if you ever do a crime that involves DNA, they already got it in the system so they can match it up. And then your bunkie, I mean, you're stuck in there with them. If it's a killer or if it's somebody who's done some worse crimes, like, thing like that, then that's it. There's nothing you can do about it. You can fight them and then get yourself in more trouble and get put in a hole, which I went to the hole, not at RDC, but in prison. I'll explain that in later videos. But, I mean, they got you in there with somebody who could be a killer. Matter of fact, when I was in there, the guy next door to me was asking my bunkie about DNA because he was worried about his DNA being on file because he was asking if they could match it up to a crime from like in 1990, which tells me he did some shit, the great word, in the 90s, and he was worried it was going to catch up with him. That's all he was worried about, was asking, will that DNA go back like when they got my DNA? If something happened in 1990, could they link it to that? Well, yeah, if they run it through the system, of course they're going to link it to you. But yeah, he was grimy. He was next door, right next door. The way it is, you can reach your arm out and around almost to the next cell. So he was getting candy off my bunkie, and they was swapping back and forth trying to get stuff. But at RDC, they treat you like shit. That's the whole purpose of it. It's strictly, you ain't supposed to be doing nothing but being there. That's all your purpose is there. You can write your letters, you can get your letters, but other than that, you're just there like cattle, and you're getting tested on. Whatever that is, the process. They test you, they evaluate you, and then they decide where you're going to go. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and get into this. What is RDC? It's a Reception Diagnostic Center. It's Indiana's maximum security intake facility for adult men sentenced to the Indiana Department of Correction. Yeah, this is like the maximum of the maximum. This is strictly, you ain't doing nothing but going to chow, and that's it. What they do here, every male inmate passes through there first, like I said. And every adult male sentenced to Indiana Department of Corrections are received here first, classified, and then transferred out. But they ask you questions about, do you have any family that works in the prisons? Do you know anybody in any prison? Where would you want to go? They give you a map. They put a map in front of you, and they say, point on here where you would like to go. And it's supposed to be to help your family be able to come visit you easier. And they make you think what you pick is where you're going to go. But that's not how it works. It's not what you pick is where you go. Sometimes they do. I guess it depends on your crime. and your time amount. But due to my crime, which was a burglary, they considered it a violent crime because it was people was home when I did it. So it was more a home invasion burglary. And then since I had 20 years, I could only go to a maximum security prison, which shocked me because, I'm thinking, man, this is my first time in prison. I'm going to go to a level 1, cakewalk, get freedom and all that. No, they put me straight to maximum security prison. Well, it's actually a medium maximum classified. They have a lower level prison, a level 1 prison that's outside of where I was at, but I didn't get that choice. But at RDC, what they do is treat you like cattle, basically. It was built in 1971. I guess it was completed in 1993, but it looks like it's from the 1950s or 1970s once you're inside there. There's more than 600 incarcerated individuals in there. It's older. You can tell when you're in there. By the way, guys, if you like this video, if you're learning something new, hit that like button, comment, subscribe. Please help me keep this going. I might be a little off on this video. I'm trying to get used to the camera, but the more I'm used to it, the better the flow will get. Once I start getting more questions too, once people give me something to work with, it'll be a lot better. And the intake process, here's what actually happens on arrival. Received and evaluated. A comprehensive evaluation, which is interviews, reports, diagnostic testing. The interviews is with psychiatrists. The reports is any crime you've ever done. They pull out your whole record. And then the diagnostic testing. They test for hepatitis. They test for AIDS. They test for your overall health. They test for everything. And then that's where your placement's determined. This evaluation determines the offender facility, which, like I said, they'll give you a map and say, where do you think it would be easier for your family to visit? Do you know anybody at these prisons? Do you have any keep separates? Which a keep separate is somebody you got a problem with, which I don't think they really care about that. And if you ain't gang affiliated, it don't matter. Multiple divisions assesses every incarcerated person. Physical health, like I said, medical exams, chronic condition reviews, overall physical needs, emotional, mental health screenings, trauma evaluations, addiction recovery. I forgot they do that. They ask you if you want to try to join a program, or did the judge sentence you to a program, which in my case, that was my deal. The judge sentenced me to prison, and he gave me the 20 years for each charge. I had 2 burglaries because I did them both on I did them on 2 separate days. I did it twice on 2 separate occasions. Like I said, I told on myself. I did it alone, so nobody could tell on me. And then I ended up talking to detectives like a dumbass, and I told on myself. So I got myself 2 20-year sentences. But when the judge sentenced me to 20 years, I got a crazy story about that too. I'm telling you, it's this town and the story that people wouldn't believe it. Like, you guys probably ain't gonna believe the stuff. But I wound up getting married to somebody who knew the judge. That's a story for another episode, but it came in handy later. And then it showed me how corrupt the system can really be. I just tell you that much. But anyway, that was my deal. After the judge sentenced me to 20 years, I went in front of the judge and, I turned myself in, is what I did. I got tired of running. Like, I finally just broke after 5 years of running, watching every move I made, checking car lights before I got in it, every turn signal, making sure the license plate light worked, making sure everybody wore their seatbelt, and making sure they did the speed limit. When I walked around, I always made sure I always paid attention for any way I could run. It just finally took its toll on me. I got in a relationship. And we got a pizza shop. I couldn't even run the pizza shop because I had cops coming in there, and me being on the run, I felt like any day is just a matter of time before they realize who I am, or they see my picture, because they did put my picture in the Watchdog Weekly newspaper. So I'm thinking anytime one of these cops I'm serving here is going to bust me. So anytime a cop would come in, I'd have to go hide in the back while my old lady did dealing with it. But anyway, I just turned myself in, finally went in front of the judge, told him, look, I can't. And he asked me, why'd you do it? Why'd you turn yourself in? And I told him, because I can't even build a life. So I'm tired of running. It's living day by day, and I can't make no long-term plans. I don't want to own nothing because I know it's all going to get taken. I don't even want to get serious in my relationship because I know any day I can be taken away. Well, he got into it with the prosecutor. I'll talk about that as questions come more. But anyway, he gave me 20 years. I had a good public defender. It was a woman. When I first met her, she was a bitch. I ain't gonna lie, she was shitty. She's like, I'm just gonna put it to you blunt. You're going away for a long time. I was like, well, you're my attorney. This is my first charge ever, blah, blah, blah. Well, she did try, but she let me do the talking. After she talked to me for a while, she was like, you know what? I'm gonna let you do the talking. If you want to speak your shit. I'll let you speak. The judge gives you a chance to speak to him. So I went up there and I told him, he gave me a chance the first time. I turned myself in. He gave me a chance. Let me get out on a drug court program. He told me if I ran, I'm going to make him or the prosecutor look stupid, and it better be the prosecutor, because the prosecutor was arguing that he shouldn't let me out. Well, he said, I'm going to go ahead and let you out since you turned yourself in and you haven't went nowhere in the 5 years. Because I stayed in my own hometown for 5 years on the run. He even asked and looked at the prosecutor, and he asked the prosecutor, did you guys even look for him? And then the prosecutor said, I don't remember what the prosecutor said, but I do remember the words, Your Honor, you'd be an idiot if you let this man out today. And that's why the judge said, you're going to prove one of us wrong, and it better be the prosecutor. Better not be me. So he let me go, and I ran the third day. So I went back on the run. But anyway, my attorney, after I was sentenced to 20 years times 2, my attorney asked if she could approach the bench. I think she felt bad for me because it was my first time. I was a dumbass. I told on myself by talking to the detective. She approached the bench and asked if she could give me a drug treatment program because I was on drugs. I was shooting up. I had that big of an addiction where I was shooting up every day. Well, the judge said, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give you the, I can't remember the name of it, purposeful incarceration, where if I completed a 9-month program, I could get my sentence modified, which means I could either get a time cut or I could get modified from prison to like house arrest or work release. Well, I get the whole reason I'm on this topic now is because of the evaluation at RDC. Because if you are there for addiction recovery, they send you to a prison based on that factor too. Well, they asked me there, did you get the purposeful incarceration? I said, yes, I did. The judge said it when he sentenced me. But the judge wrote it down in my order to the RGC. He wrote it down, purposeful incarceration program recommended. But because he didn't check one box, one small check mark on a box, I got sent to a maximum security prison. I wasn't even able to do the program that he ordered for me to do. And just right there, that's common mistakes that the system makes that can ruin somebody's life. But I didn't give up. That's another story. I'll get into that, what all I had to do. But that's where they evaluate you. And if you're in there for addiction recovery, they send you to a program based on that. Educational and work, I didn't do none. Well, I did. Actually, I did. I got in there and I got my GED. So I think they put that on a thing because I was able to get in there in like my first month and start my GED classes. But it's hell. If the judge don't do what he's supposed to do on your paperwork, it can mean a difference of decades or months to years. And then with the assessment results, they decide where an inmate is ultimately transferred. Most individuals matches individuals to the facility best suited to their needs. So basically, like I said, what it is if you got under 5 years, you probably go to a minimum security. If you have 20 years like I did, you're going to go to a maximum security. And I went to prison. It looks exactly like you see here. Got the towers, got the dogs, they got the guards walking around with dogs on a leash, German shepherds, and all that. And it's basically they just assess you there, so that you don't really get to the first day of prison for a couple months after being in RDC. There was some fights in RDC, some crazy things, but you can't see because you're in a jail cell. Yeah, it's got the bars, but the way it is, they're lined up in a line to where you can't see the one next to you. There is none across from you, so you can't see people across from you. You ain't even allowed to hang a blanket up when you take a shit. If they catch you hanging up a blanket so you can cover yourself while you're shitting, then you get rolled up, and that can affect your time cut. You ain't allowed no visits there. RDC, you don't get no visits. You do get your mail. Like I said, you get to write some letters, but mail must be addressed to the offender and must have your DOC number included. If anybody messes up on that, then you don't get it. They didn't have this chirping, but this chirp they got now about as much as I got for your first day of prison. It was just RDC. And there ain't a lot that goes on in RDC, so there's really not a lot to talk about RDC, except for the basics of what they do, what it's like, and the whole purpose of it. But other than that, I need some comment questions, guys. I need some questions in the comments so you give me something to work off here. If I don't start getting questions, I'm just going to go in a new chronological order from jail to RDC, from RDC to the prison, and then what went on in prison. But I prefer to have you guys ask me questions and give me something to go off of. But with that being said, that's all I got for this video. Hopefully it wasn't too mumbled up and jumbled up. Hopefully you guys got some answers and an idea of what it was about. Now, once I start getting into, the prison and you guys start asking me questions, it'll be easier for me to talk about it and get to where you guys, it's not a bunch of me mumble and jumbling words up. Once I get a little more comfortable on camera too. With that being said, though, thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking. Thanks for commenting. I'm hoping I can turn this into a nice community-based thing where I can answer questions that people have as far as my drug addiction. Don't be afraid to ask questions about that. What went on in prison? Ask me. I'll tell you. I mean, I'm a straight shooting guy. I ain't gonna lie. I ain't got that pride. I know who I am as a man, so I'm not worried about hurting my pride or sounding like a punk or sounding like a badass or none of that. It's just gonna be straightforward truth. So with that being said, throw some questions in the comments, guys. Until the next video, that's all I got. See ya.